What is life of a no-kid family looks like in China? Hi everyone, this is Mao. Now I am living with my wife Judy without kid in Beijing. In this channel, I will share with you of my daily life stories. Today, I want to share a car accident I was involved in recently. It could be a typical situation in China and a typical way to deal with it. So stay to the end and tell me if it meets your expectation. A few days ago, I discovered that my car had been in an accident. But here is the strange part. I wasn't there. I didn't know who hit my car. I didn't know when it happened. And I didn't even know where it happened. No note, no witness, no camera footage. At least, not at the first. At that moment, I had two choices. I could let go and accept the loss, or I could try to reconstruct what happened step by step like a real-life investigation. In this video, I will show you exactly how I checked down the time, the location, and the person who is responsible, and how it eventually led to compensation. Let's start from the beginning. On the morning of 20th, around 11 a.m., I went downstairs to drive my car. That's when I noticed something was very wrong. There was a large dent and a scratch on the front right side of my front bumper. At first, I was confused. My car was parked very close to a wall. There was almost no space for another car to hit it after I parked, which meant only one thing: the damage must have happened before I parked there, at some unknown time, in some unknown place, caused by some unknown person. And that raised a big question: who hit my car? When did it happen? And how did it happen? At that point, I had almost no clues. So I started to break in the timeline. The night before, I had driven to a ski resort. Luckily, the entrance and exit of the ski resort are covered by surveillance cameras. So I decided to break the timeline into three parts. 1. Before going to the ski resort. 2. At the ski resort. 3. After leaving the ski resort. So my first step was to contact the ski resort and ask for images of my car when entering and exiting. They sent me two photos. When I zoomed in, something important became clear. In both photos, entering and leaving, the scratch was already there, which meant the accident definitely happened before I arrived at the ski resort. That eliminated one entire section of time. Now things get more complicated. It's very difficult to retrieve traffic camera footage from public roads. So my next option was the surveillance cameras in my residential community. I contacted property management and asked them to check footage from before I went skiing. When my car was parked in the neighborhood, my logic was simple. If the scratch was already there, then I had to go even further back in time. If it wasn't, then the accident happened on the road, which would be much harder to deal with. Either way, checking the footage was the only move forward. An unexpected discovery. When we reviewed the community surveillance footage, I was honestly surprised. The scratch appeared much earlier than I expected. I originally thought the accident happened on the 20th, but the footage showed that the scratch first appears around noon on the 17th. Once the time was locked in, we kept reviewing footage from that moment, and eventually we find it. A car hit mine while turning a corner. Even more importantly, the driver got out of the car and checked the damage, but she did not leave a note. She did not try to contact me, and then she just left. At this point, I had everything I needed: the exact time, the exact location, and the license plate number of the car that caused the damage. So a strategic decision has made. Technically, I could have gone to property management with the license plate and tried to contact the driver directly, but there were two major problems. First, several days had already passed. There was a high chance the driver would simply deny everything. Second, and more importantly, I discovered something critical after doing some research. In China, no matter how small the accident is, if the driver caused damage and leaves without staying or actively contacting the owner, it is legally considered hit and run. The penalties can include 1. Full liability of the accident, 2. Fines, 3. To retake driving license by retaking driving exams, and in serious cases, detention for 5 to 15 days. The only way for the driver to avoid these penalties is if the victim, me, chooses to forgive them. That meant one thing: only after the police officially confirmed the hit and run would I have the legal leverage to decide whether to forgive her and force a fair compensation without endless arguing. So I made my decision. I called the police. Now is the part of the police involvement. After reporting the accident, the police asked me to register the case at the Traffic Police Accident Department. Once registered, the officer immediately contacted the driver and scheduled a meeting for 10 a.m. on the 26th, where both of us would come in to discuss a resolution. And just as I expected, during phone communication, the driver insisted on two things. First, she claimed she had already tried to contact me through property management, but couldn't reach me. Second, she repeatedly emphasized that my car was not parked properly, even though it was inside the residential area. It was very clear what she was trying to do: shift the responsibility. But legally, it didn't matter. If she truly couldn't reach me, she should have reported the accident to the police immediately. Failing to do so is exactly what defines hit and run. The final resolution part. At first, she tried once again to explain and defend herself. But just as I predicted, the police gave her no room to argue. They directly ruled it as hit and run. The officer told her very clearly she had two options: accept my compensation request or face the legal penalties. Her attitude changed instantly. After a short discussion, she agreed to compensate me 3,000 RMB in cash on the spot. And just like that, the case was closed. Here is the final thoughts. Let me end with a brief summary. In China, if you are involved in any traffic accident, no matter how minor, even if the other party is not present, you should never ignore it or simply leave. Not only because surveillance cameras are everywhere, making it very difficult to escape responsibility, but more importantly, once an incident is classified as hit and run, the issue is no longer just about repair costs. It became about how much you are willing to pay to avoid much more serious legal consequences. And at that point, the power to decide is no longer in your hands. So now I'm curious, if something like this happened in your country, how would it usually be handled? Would you try to check it down to the end? What kind of punishment would the driver face? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. Okay, see you next time. This is what I want to say for today. And next time, I will share with you more of my experience and stories in China. See you.